In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, hello and welcome to Peer Home with me, Sahar. Well, we've stated time and again that family is the core and the pillar of society. And if you tuned in last week, you know that we discussed attachment, the psychology of attachment, and its implications for family members and how significant that is within the family. Today, we'll discuss a little bit more about that topic. Of course, we have other segments to our program. We have a report from here and there and much, much more, so don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Well, we're delighted and honored to have Dr. Mohsen Fatemi back with us to discuss the psychology of attachment and its implications for family members. Hello and a very warm welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hello.
Dr. Mohsen Fatemi has done his postdoctoral studies in the Department of Psychology at Harvard University. He also teaches in the Department of Psychology at Harvard and the University of Massachusetts in Boston. Also, the Western Washington University. He's a registered psychologist and a keynote speaker at a number of international congresses, as well as a published author. He's also part of the advisory and editorial board of the American Psychological Association Encyclopedia of Critical Psychology. Last week we discussed the psychology of attachment and its implications for family members. So just for the viewers who are tuning in for the first time or they just want to have a bit of a refresher, let's summarize last week's program.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We began with attachment styles and explained that the type of relationship that you have with your caregiver has an impact on the upcoming relationship between you and your spouse. So we classified three types of attachment styles. The secure one, where you have security and composure. In other words, the caregiver gives you the sense of trust, so you can trust your caregiver. There is no sort of gap between you and your parents, namely the caregivers. And as a result of that, in your upcoming relationship, you can develop trust, understanding, and empathy and sympathy. Whereas in the avoidant style, you would have the suppression of your feelings. You want to be close and intimate to your caregiver or something, but out of your experience, you have learned to suppress. In the upcoming relationship of yourself, you would have the same sort of approach. So you suppress, you have difficulty getting connected to people around yourself. In the third type of attachment style, which would be anxious, ambivalent style, you never know because your caregiver are coming from this overbearing attitude with hubris or something. So you have difficulty getting connected to them because you never know what's going to happen. Are they going to come up with a positive response? Are they going to warmly welcome you? Or they just give you a cold shoulder? As a result of that, you would have problems getting connected to your spouse later on. Studies have demonstrated that for romantic relationship based on secure attachment styles, you could have an enduring relationship, whereas for anxiety or avoidant style, your relationship is going to be more perturbed because of the attachment that you have experienced in your past life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so after that we wanted to know, we didn't have time to get to the final question, but we wanted to know, can we revise the attachment style that that's been established? Because we realize if this has been established during your childhood, and like you said, it's going to affect your relationship down the line, can we revise this?
Yeah, the assumption is that when you have attachment styles inherited from the past, you're doomed for failure. So you would be denouncing your own fate or destination or something, and you won't have the possibility of any change or something. But again, studies and findings have demonstrated that people who are exposed to coaching, educational, pedagogical programs, or they receive some sort of suitable counseling and programs that develop some sort of radical transformation of consciousness, they can revamp up to 35% or sometimes 65% of success have been observed among people who have had, so and so attachment styles, but out of questioning.
Are we talking about therapy, therapy counseling?
Yeah, it could include therapy, it could include, coaching, it could include effective educational programs and follow-up. You might just receive some form of therapy or something, but the mere therapeutic competencies are not good enough. You have to just do the follow-up. And the follow-up can demonstrate that, well, you can be the creator of your life. If you have, and remember we had this discussion a while ago, that if you understand the power of choice, the power of your choices in your life, you can say that, for example, a communication can be a choice. So it could serve as a choice-oriented program, and as a result of that, you choose, for example, to come up with a positive reaction. People have the assumption that they do not have the power to respond. But if you look at our interaction transactions, you can see that up to 90% of our life depends on our choices. You choose to marry somebody, you choose to buy the following, you choose to sell the following, you choose to go to school, you choose to do a lot of things, and you choose not to do a lot of things. A number of things that are happening to us are out of our choices, so they just happen to us, and as a result of that, we become sort of passive. We are the recipient. Imagine that you're going to go, for example, to school or to your office this morning, and suddenly your kid or your spouse or somebody else spills, for example, orange juice on your shirts or something. And you have the assumption that once you've got this, for example, new outfit, everybody's going to be mesmerized because of that. Everybody's going to welcoming you, and then the whole day is going to be ruined because of this spilling event. Now, this was not a choice of yours. This just happened to you because of some, confounding variable, something out of your own sort of jurisdictional power. Now, the question is, are you going to have a choice to do something in response to what happened to you, or you're just merely a recipient of something that you don't have any power to go ahead and proceed with any sort of action?
Go out with the
yeah, I mean, you could just basically fly off the handle, go bananas, get furious, and the whole day is going to be turning into a pandemonium. Or you could just take it up on yourself and say, well, I'm going to pull myself together, I'm going to go and change a new outfit and go with this outfit today because it's a choice. So when people understand that they have choices in every single second of their life, every moment of their life is going to be filled with the power of choices. So it is true that the attachment styles has got an impact on our relationship, on how we approach. Automatically, it gives us a schema. So when you are brought up, for example, in a family where fears, anxiety, doubts, skepticism, always bitching and complaining, and all of them are pervasive in the patterns of your life, you automatically come up with the same sort of thing. It's like a schema that pops up in your mind. If somebody does something towards you or you try to approach that, that sort of a schema pops up automatically in a mindless form. But in the meantime, you can say, well, I have the choice to do the following because of the power of my mindfulness, the power of the choices. And you become proactive. The difference between people who are just, receiving this cultivation, socialization process, the exposure effect that they have received from their family members, and people who are proactively looking into the options lies in the fact that once you have this power of creating your choices, you always take it upon yourself to say, well, I'm going to think about this, I'm going to think about the choices that I have, and I'm not just going to be merely a passive recipient of all these things. Things can happen to you, always, constantly, incessantly, continuously. All around yourself, you're overwhelmed by all these events and episodes and everything, but then you can sit back and say, what is it that I can do? And practicing this sort of thing helps you revamp the possibility of changes that you can, develop in your life and proceed with further action.
I think also because that's going back to the discussion about hope, I think that's the easy way out of it. I think if you think that you've been raised in such a family and you think, well, I have this attachment style and it's going to affect my relationship, it's going to affect my future, and there's nothing I can do about it, that's obviously the easy way out. Like you said, it's passive and you just sit and wait for things to happen to you as opposed to being proactive. And if that was the case, we couldn't change anything in our lives. Because
yeah, exactly. And that's why in Islam you can see this immense emphasis on hope. You know, there are lots of hadith in Islam that demonstrate that when you lose your hope and you become hopeless and you've got this sense of despondency, despondency is going to lead to paganism. Despondency is going to lead to isolation, to alienation, to this sense of depletion of energy or something. Because hope always, the language and the psychology of hope always provides you with options, always provides you with, well, there are lots of choices around me. There are lots of possibilities around me. Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, who is also a theologian, a Christian theologian, has got a good example of the psychology of hope, where he talks about when you bump into a wall or something, the paradox of the language suggests that, you know, you can't go further. You got to go back because you bump into a wall. I mean, you can't do anything about it. It's insurmountable, impediment, obstacle, go back. Whereas you can just say, well, you know what? I'm going to overcome this seemingly insurmountable impediment through the power of hope or faith. So what hope and faith and prayer, they do is that they open up a new language. They open up a new perspective. And the same perspective can apply to, you know, the issue of attachment style, that regardless of what has happened to me, they influence me, but I can always be an observer. And as a result of that observer, I can take it upon myself to act differently. I mean, it needs and requires practice, understanding, awareness, but it is possible. It's not that people are doomed for failure when they have the attachment style. In the meantime, it shows the reality that as long as people have not got that sense of awareness, they automatically go ahead with that sense of relationship. And as a result of that, people who are brought up in avoidant, anxious form of styles, they do not have that sense of enduring relationship. They usually do some things that, you know, develop a devastation.
So awareness is quite important to be
awareness
aware
is quite
of
important,
where
but
you stand.
Right after awareness, it's an ontological engagement. It's not just a cognitive sort of awareness that you know.
At that point, then you become
you got to be
proactive and
experientially involved so that you can understand what is it that stops you from doing this, or what is it that prevents you from, So you got to make it, you know, as a successful project.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go and listen to our story, and of course, we'll be back and talk more about the attachment of psychology. Don't go away.
The Liar's Hat. Once upon a time, there was a man who told lies all the time. He told lies wherever he went. He told lies at home, in the bazaar, in the street, in the neighborhood, and anywhere else. His family and friends always told him to stop lying, but he answered, "Who says that I lie? I'm the most honest person in the world." Among the man's friends, there was a person who knew him very well. He didn't want the liar to be humiliated because of his own lies, so he told his friend, "Come on and stop lying from now on before you are humiliated." "Why should I be humiliated? It is evident that you'll be humiliated. I desire your happiness. Stop lying before you are humiliated." The liar repeated what he always used to say. After some time, they were both invited to a party. Some friends were sitting and talking about different things. One of them said, "It is a couple of days that saffron has become abundant and cheap at the city market. If anybody needs saffron, it is the best time to buy it." The liar suddenly said, "There's no saffron on the market. You can't find even a gram of it." The saffron seller said, "Impossible! I'm a saffron seller." "Yes, I know that you are a saffron seller, but there's no saffron on the market these days." The saffron seller smiled bitterly and said, "What a strange world. I've been brought up with saffron, and now this man tells me that there's no saffron on the market." The liar laughed loudly and said, What you were brought up by was turmeric, not saffron." Hearing this, the saffron seller stood up and said, "Do you mean that I am a liar?" The liar stood up too and said, "You are not a liar, you are just ignorant." The saffron seller said, "If you say that I'm a liar, I won't stay here even for a moment." The host calmed the saffron seller down and said, "You are all honest people. There are no liars here." Suddenly, one of the guests said, "I say that there are no liars in this party because liars have a hole in their hats." Hearing this, the liar took off his hat quickly and started looking at it. Meanwhile, everybody was looking and laughing at him. The saffron seller said, "The hat said what it had to say." The liar put on his hat and remained quiet and bowed his head in shame. This story is cited when people tell a lie and reveal their own lie unwantedly.
Welcome back to the program. Well, we're discussing the attachment and the psychology of attachment and its implications for family members. And at this point, we want to know, Dr. Fatemi, what are the type of things that parents can do to develop attunement with their children? As I think we touched on this last time a little bit more. So.
Yeah, let's find out what attunement is all about first. Attunement happens when you are at sync with your kids in terms of intersubjectivity of affect. You know that we have affect and emotions and feelings, and psychologically it should be pronounced affect, not affect, because affect is a verb and affect is a noun. So when we talk about affect, you talk about intersubjectivity, that you are at sync, for example, with your kids. If your kids are experiencing sadness or happiness or any sort of emotion, and they are going to develop any sort of affect, are you going to be simultaneously present? Are you going to be simultaneously experiencing the same type of world or not? That develops attunement. So attunement happens when you are connected to your kids, not just in cognition, but also in affective components, in terms of experiencing that world of emotional attachment that they are experiencing. And you know that when you're dealing with any human being, it's not just a matter of cognition that he's processing, or it's a matter of information or data analysis that he's been exposed to. We also have affective components, types of things that you experience, being sad or mad or angry or happy or something, experiencing exhilaration or rapture, experiencing frustration or pride, experiencing animosity or experiencing a delighted world of possibilities. All of them go back to the infinite world of emotions. So parents are going to demonstrate, am I going to be with my kids or not? So, we have something which is interesting in terms of the psychology of attachments. We call this as imitation, which means that parents can always be present, quintessentially present in terms of imitating what the kids are experiencing. And when that happens, kids are going to get that sense of wholeness, that sense of the so-called individuation that they can experience.
So if the kid laughs, you laugh with them?
You laugh with them, or you experience that sort of attunement in the sense that intersubjectivity between you and I are going to happen. If you're in a world of sadness and I'm laughing at you, if you're in a world of madness and I'm just caring, about something else, this does not develop attunement. So when parents are simultaneously developing that sense of presence, that sense of being there, it has positive implication for kids. And as a result of that, one of them is going to manifest in imitation. So kids who are not receiving that are called imitation personalities. They are hungry for that sort of imitation. And as a result of that, later on in their stages of life, what they may do is that they most likely go from one relationship to the other relationship. They get connected to one person, They stop this relationship, they go and resume another relationship.
Constantly yearning for
Yeah,
something that they
yearning
can't seem to
for
find.
attention. You know, they want to seek the attention. They want to get the attention of people around themselves because of that missing point in their past life. And as a result of that, that hunger is going to be perceptible in the pattern of their life, and they are famished, you know, for any sort of attention. They go from one performance to the other performance, one relationship to the other relationship, and they unconsciously and implicitly tell you that, hey, I am parched with thirst for getting that sort of attention. And on the other hand, when parents fail to develop that sense of idealization that the kids are going to require for their sense of development, the kids later on, based on that sort of broken type of pattern, they go ahead with seeking avenues of legitimacy, avenues of credibility, avenues of respect on behalf of the other people. And one example of this unfolds in the type of relationship they are experiencing through connecting to people of great significance. So you try to always stick to people who are seemingly important,
So
significant.
sort of trying to validate yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You
through
want
someone
to
who is
you want to
more-
substantiate yourself. You want to say, well, I'm a big person through this connectedness. And as a result of that, those people are trying to seek, you know, the source of credibility, the source of power, the source of prestige, to somehow demonstrate to people around themselves and to themselves as well that, you know what, I'm feeling great because of Tom, Dick, and Harry. So that develops that sense of dependency over people. As long as that dependency exists, they feel fine. If that dependency goes away, they are just,
They lose their confidence.
you know, lose the confidence, and as a result of that, they get that sense of perturbability again, and they go back. So attunement has got great significant implication in terms of affect, in terms of, you know, affective components, and it always comes up with the question that, are your parents giving you what you need to have in terms of the emotional configuration?
How about if, the parents aren't attuned? I guess if you have a mother and a father, the mother is somewhat developing a good attachment style, and yet the father is sending mixed signals and that anxiety and that fear. How does that affect the child?
Well, you can say that again. I mean, it has negative impacts on the kids because the kids are observing that sort of double-bind messages on behalf of parents, that sort of gap among between parents, and as a result of that, they can't see that sort of synchronicity, that sort of conformity, that sort of congruence that they need to have. And as a result of that, they get frustrated because the parents, for example, are having a lot of conflict with one another. The mom says, for example, go for the ice cream. The dad says, what on earth are you doing? Dad prescribes something, mom prescribes something. Because of all these contradictions in prescribing, proscribing, remonstrating, upbraiding, blaming, all of them, you just get this concept of where am I? And you know, when you get these kids analyzed later on in a psychoanalytical perspective, you can find out that these kids are really suffering from that sense of wholeness, that sense of individuation. And lots of clients in clinical psychologies research demonstrate that, the findings demonstrate that, you know, when kids are not receiving that sense of wholeness, that sense of synergy between parents, they sometimes get this sense of loss, that sense of discombobulation, that where am I? And later on, for example, they're 25, 26, you ask them, do you know what you're going to, for example, go for this course of a study or this program or something? They just say, I don't know. I mean, I feel like some sort of excruciatingly painful encumbrance upon myself, but I really don't know what direction I am going to have, because that direction requires that sense of individuation, and that sense of individuation cannot happen when parents are themselves at conflict. You know, they say something contradicting one another, and you know, confusing signals, missing signals, and mixing signals. All of them contribute to that sense of, well, a lack of authentic life. And as a result of that, people get that bogus form of life. You know, they have implosive anger.
Constantly unsure,
you know,
I guess.
Exactly.
Going back to the anxiety that you were referring to.
Yeah, the anxiety
because
is going to
they're
go
never
up.
sure.
They always try to stick to a lot of things to compensate for that anxiety. In a lot of cases, they suffer from inferiority. So you can see that the dynamics of relationship between mom and dad would have great implications, not only for attunement, but also for the growth and development. Kids cannot experience that emotional development, that emotional expansion, once they get deprived of messages that are going to be necessary for their emotional development. You know, we think about economic development, unfortunately, in our world today, because that's the only indication of whether you're developed, underdeveloped, or, you know, in the process of development. But along with economic development, we have to think about emotional development.
Which
you know,
is
spiritual
often
development.
left
And
behind.
emotional development is of great significance. You know, people can be poor, can experience poverty, can be pauperized because of the sort of emotional development that they have not received, the deprivation of emotional development. I mean, people can have a luxurious life, they can live in houses of golden, you know, buildings or something, they can live in castles. In the meantime, if they are not having that sort of emotional development, they suffer from that sense of attunement, they suffer from that sense of
Right, because you're suffering
connectedness.
from within. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
a
It
lot of
has
those
manifestation inside yourself interpersonally, and because of that interpersonal deprivation, you would have interpersonal problems, because there's always a correlation between intrapersonal and interpersonal factors, so that you just have, well, this gap, and this gap goes back to what you observed. I mean, the assumption is that kids are not going to just be involved when dad and mom are, you know, engaged in a conflict or something, but these guys are recording everything right from the beginning of birth. So whatever you do, whatever you know, touch and see and hear, all of them are giving you this constellation, this phenomenal constellation of the impact. You
kind of watching silently, I guess, and taking it all in, and it's affecting them.
Yeah, I can't
to a major
forbear
extent.
adding that in every second we receive around 11 million bits of information every second. And out of these 11 million bits of information, we process only 14 to 15% in a conscious manner. So you can imagine how unconsciously we are exposed to all these factors, underlying factors, marginal factors, affective factors, cognitive factors, and all of them have got an impact on what we are going to be later on in our life.
future.
So if parents are not developing that sense of management, that sense of perspicacity that they should have in terms of their emotional development, kids are going to be suffering from that. And then we talk about destitute of emotional development. A lot of people may not be necessarily poor in terms of material manifestation of wealth or something, but they could be poor emotionally. And attachment styles tells us and helps us understand how we can be emotionally involved in a situation, how we can be emotionally developed or underdeveloped. And if we are emotionally underdeveloped, we can go ahead and say, well, you know, I'm going to go ahead and take it upon myself to think about the following factors, because they can have an impact on my opulent growth. If I'm not having that, I cannot be prolifically developed in the course of my becoming somebody else in the process of my own growth.
So going back to the parents, they need to be attuned, I think, with each other, and I guess agree on their parenting style, and then take it from then and become that attunement with
Absolutely.
their children. Okay. Well, we'll go for a break. When we come back, it's time for From Here and There. Welcome back. Well, now it's time for From Here and There with my colleague Farhad Vafoju. In this segment of the program, he has an interesting book, of course, an informative article, and a lovely email from you, the viewers. Mr. Vafoju, what do you have for us today?
Thank you so very much, Ms. Harju.
You're very welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this part of the show, From Here and There. A new study conducted by the American researchers has suggested that eating a daily portion of nuts benefits people to have longer lives. A recent study, which is the largest ever done research on the issue, linked eating nuts to a healthier lifestyle. Researchers tracked nearly 120,000 men and women for 30 years and found that those who regularly consume nuts were less likely to die during the study period than those ones who never ate nuts, according to the findings published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Eating nuts up to 4 portions was linked to a 13% reduction in deaths, and a daily handful of nuts cut the death rate during the study by 20%. As nuts are high in unsaturated fats, protein, and vitamins, as well as antioxidants, they're linked to a lower risk of heart disease. The oils in nuts can reduce bad cholesterol and possibly inflammation. While the benefits were seen from peanuts, pistachios, almonds, walnuts, and other tree nuts, researchers recommend various nuts and say a handful of nuts a day keeps a doctor away. Welcome back. Today I'm going to introduce you to the book Al-Imam al-Mahdi, The Just Leader of Humanity. The book is authored by Ayatollah Ibrahim Amini. It's a great book to learn more about the Imam of Age, Imam Mahdi. Some of the chapters of the book include the beginning of the belief in Mahdi, the pseudo-Mahdis, the unseen world, and the Imam of the Age. How will the Imam know that the time for the appearance has come? I'm positive this book will help us boost our knowledge about the Imam and will answer a good deal of questions we might have in our minds. Well, and it's time for our email at this part of the program. We have an email from Mehmet. He has written to us, "Hello, I usually watch your program and I really enjoy it. I have a question which I hope to find its answer in your program. I want to know what salvation is according to Islam." And he further asked the question, can it be achieved through sincere worship? Thanks a lot. Now I would like to ask Dr. Fatemi this question. Dr. Fatemi, what do you think? What is salvation according to Islam?
Well, if you look at salvation in the first slogan that you say in call for prayers, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah, is demonstrating the first pillar of salvation in the sense that when you want to have salvation and emancipation, you have to basically remove any sort of worshiping approach on behalf of everything. So consumerism, materialism, reductionism, all of them are going to go away. And your focus and concentration would just be on God, the only ultimate source of composure and tranquility. In addition to that, you would receive salvation once you have your sort of abiding approach by the Prophet Muhammad salawatullah alayhi, and the infallible Imams, in the sense that once you take a leaf out of their book for your own daily activities and daily life or something, you would receive the examples and manifestation of salvation. So salvation can happen in terms of your epistemological and ontological involvement, epistemological and ontological in the sense that you believe not just in words but also in action that there is only God that you are going to rely on. And as a result of that, you save yourself and you remove any sort of slavery. You know, people are enslaved by lots of things in our world. They could be enslaved by worshiping so many things, including their own selfish desires, their own egotism. And once you become a subject of your own egoism or egotism, you just get yourself away and dissipated from the sense of salvation. So salvation is going to be saying nay, saying no to any sort of manifestation of despotism, selfishness, egoism, arrogance, and embracing the presence of God in every single aspect of your life. This is obviously a topic of a lengthy discussion, but I know that I should not be continuing that more because we've got other things to cover.
But one more question I would like to ask is that how would a non-Muslim psychologist, a Western psychologist, or a Western school of psychology define the word salvation? Is it a concept of religion or is it also a concept of psychology?
Well, salvation is associated with a religious theme most of the time. They talk about, spiritual type of psychology when you can have. But the word salvation etymologically is related to a concept that is going to be manifesting itself in religious connectedness, in the sense that when you're connected to a realm beyond yourself. You see yourself not just epitomized in your carnal desires or something. So salvation is associated with emancipation, with liberation, and that word has got connotation that are associated with a sense of the transcendental life, in the sense that you're not just summed up in this material manifestation. So a psychologist can talk about salvation in different contexts. If he or she means that you have to just remove all these form of manacles and hog ties that are going to get you, cooped and caged and circumscribed in the parochialism of your own life or something. But the word salvation, most of the time, is getting connected to that sense of religious connotation with implication for here and hereafter.
Right, and the final question, I promise. How would you differentiate between the salvation, as you defined it, and Abraham Maslow's self-actualization?
Well, Abraham Maslow's self-actualization talks about something else. It talks about right at the end, down of the pillar, you would have this hierarchy of the needs, and right beneath the needs you have the physiological needs. So for example, if you're hungry and thirsty and you've got the best orator, the best lecturer in your class, you won't be able to focus on what he or she's saying. So you got to go. If you're famished, you just need to get yourself satiated in terms of these physiological needs. Or the same, the sort of sexual, for example, needs are taken into consideration. Then you've got the sense of security, that sense of self-esteem, until you achieve the self-actualization. So the idea is that you won't be able to get that sense of self-actualization if the other needs of yours are concealed to oblivion. In order to get yourself actualized, you have to get all these other needs to be taken into account as earnest as possible in order to pave the ground for it. So they just serve as a preamble in this hierarchical aspects of needs. So salvation in that sense may be metaphorically attributed to that sense of self-actualization when you see yourself under the umbrella of all these needs are satiated, are all of them taken care of. So you go up the ladder and you got this sense of, well, I'm here with all these manifestation of needs, everything is taken care of, from the loaf of bread to self-esteem, to building and everything. And bear in mind that there might be a critique on that hierarchical aspects of needs, because in reality, in phenomenological aspect, there might be people who are having some sort of grappling and struggling with some of these needs, and nonetheless they have achieved the apex of self-actualization on the other sides of the avenues that they have set up for themselves. But you can say metaphorically, if you want to think about the doctrine of Abraham Maslow, that once you have that ladder sort of overcome and you go up as much as possible, you would have the manifestation of salvation in that sense.
Millions of thanks to Dr. Fatemi. Mehmet, I'm sure you have received the most comprehensive answer. That's it for me. Back to you, Ms. Alju.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bapoju. At this point, we'll just take a short break, and of course, we'll be back. Welcome back to the program. While we're continuing our discussions in the final minutes of the program on the attachment and the psychology of attachment, and before from here and there, we were talking about how parents need to be attuned. They need to have that attunement with their children. And I just want to know, firstly, does it make a difference if your child is a girl or a boy, female, male? As far as statistics,
No.
It doesn't make a difference. They both need that.
Everybody is in dire need of all those forms of attunements, regardless of age, regardless of male or female. Males and females are human beings, and as a result of that, they both need that sort of attention. So your kids are in dire need of attention, whether they're girls or females or boys or males or whatever you want to think about them. They need to get that sense. When we are thinking about the physical world, we think about, for example, oxygen as something that we need to continue our life. We can also think of emotional oxygen, a psychological air. And that psychological air cannot happen if parents are depriving their kids of that sense of attunement that they need to have. So they need to have that world of the climatic condition inside houses, inside homes, with opulent resources of psychological error.
And then at what point can we say, is it more significant for a child? Is it at the age group, I guess, that's mostly significant to get this attunement and get this relationship between that attachment between the mother and the...
Well, psychologists talk about stages of development, and these stages of development are associated with vital significant steps of attention in each stage. Therefore, you say that, for example, you have to hold your baby in your arms as strongly as possible and give that sense of warmth and that sense of confidence to the child. So when that child, for example, grows up and he needs your attention in terms of dialogical conversation, you need to provide him or her with that sense of dialogical conversation. So each stage needs that sense of attachment taken care of based on the status quo of the child. So if you look at the stages, for example, when a child has not yet spoken, for example, a word, he or she needs to be pampered, needs to be cuddled, needs to be caressed, needs to be, strongly touched by the parents. And as he or she moves on with the other stages of development, he or she requires different forms of attention. We just need to demonstrate that sense of presence, because in every single moment of a life, a child is going to demonstrate and convey a message of, well, I need the following, I need to have that. The children, as I have discussed this earlier, have got these primary skills of crying right at the beginning of their birth. They haven't got any other tools. They haven't got any other equipment. They haven't got any other resources to say, well, take care of me, except crying, And then the parents need to say, well, the child is crying, I'm aware of the type of crying that he or she is doing, and as a result of that, I'm going ahead and demonstrate that sense of readiness, that sense of flexibility and preparation.
But how about later on, at the stage of toddlers? I think we only have about a minute left, but at that point when punishment comes in, where does that stand?
Well, punishment, if it's just punishment in the real sense of the word, would fail to operate in a favorable manner. We can discuss this in an independent session or something because of its great significant implications. But if punishment is going to be severe, if punishment is going to be associated with physical abuse or something, it has destructive impacts. It has counterproductive implications.
But how about like a timeout?
A timeout or a mild punitive measure based on the contract between the parents and the kids can be conceivable under certain circumstances and certain occasional frameworks, but it has to be always associated with a sense of goal-oriented project for that sense of, punishment that you're going to have. Otherwise, it fails to convey a message except excruciatingly painful, remonstrating approach that is going to impose a striking blow against the emotional health of the child.
So you don't want to kind of establish a power struggle here. You don't want to show
No, not a power struggle, because anytime you get involved in a power struggle form of framework, you would just end up getting involved in different masks, and then you become pretentiously involved in one, and then you try to get emotionally involved in the other one, and as a result of that, the kid is not going to receive any positive message on behalf of you. No constructive message is going to be conveyed. Everything is going to be failing, and as a result of that, no possibility of positive development, no possibility of emotional development.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, go on our website, sahartv.ir. Drop us a line and tell us what you think. Purehome@sahartv.ir is our email. Thank you so much for inviting us into your Pure Home. Goodbye and God bless. And again, thank you for being with us.